It also every one of you will get this pop-up, so just press on got it and don't leave the meeting and yeah, you're good to go.
All right, perfect. Good evening, everybody. A warm welcome to BlueLearn's and get another academic week session. We are starting off with academic week starting today, and it will go up till 8th of April. All right, we have the first session, and we have Sajal, who is the CEO and co-founder of Akudo, a platform well known to everybody. And we have him coming from BITS Pilani, and him being a graduate of BITS Pilani with CS as a major. And he has got insights for us related to approaches towards examination, and that's what the theme of this session would be. I'm hoping Sajal is ready for the session. We can kickstart with a very basic question, right? This would be a fundamental question for everybody. I would like to ask this from behalf of all the members we have at BlueLearn. What's the essence and the objective of examinations in general? Like, why do we have examinations in the first place to kickstart this session and take it forward from here?
Awesome. No, thanks a lot. I think first of all, I'd like to start by saying that, thanks a lot, Arnav, for the introduction and the entire team at BlueLearn for conducting this session and doing a lot of these things. Like for all of you folks, we see that people coming in from school and college, and I think this is a great topic to be discussing amongst ourselves. So thanks a lot for having me. Now, I think to answer your question around what the essence of an examination is, I think that's a very existential and a philosophical question to start with. So let me just start there. But I think I'd like to start by saying that it's a way of sort of calibrating a particular measure of skill/intelligence. Having said that, I'd like to highlight that it's not multi-dimensional or like comprehensive in terms of its evaluation or slopes really well with like how in general how well you'll do in life, but it's an old way of trying to do that to the best of this thing can. It tries to measure a very specific set of intelligence and a very specific skill set. So I think having said that, like it's a very the second point would be that it's like basically a low cost way of measuring what what kind of ability a person has when it comes to very specific things. So I think that's all there is to it. I think like life and success in life has so much more to do than just how well you do in examinations, and I think everyone said that enough number of times. And I also agree with the same point. But I think with that, like an examination is just one way for like one segment of the population to just prove that they can do some things really well, but it doesn't mean a lot for the entire segment of population at large.
Perfect. I got my answer, and this is a great start for today's session. I would love to hear your journey. Where did you start your schooling? Where was the first place? And then along the way at BITS Villani as well. Would love to hear that.
Absolutely. We can dive right into that. I have a couple of slides that I quickly jotted down like 5 minutes before the call. So let me just quickly share my screen. And the first slide is going to be the introduction. And then we'll just get into some tips on how I approached examinations when I was in school. So I think a brief introduction. I'm Sajal. I was born in Chandigarh, and I stayed there. I studied there in an only boys school for close to 13 years. And then I went to Delhi for my high school. I shifted a lot of schools in Delhi. In fact, I joined DPS Gurgaon, and then I went to DPS RK Puram in my 11th. Did not like that school a lot, and then I ended up going to DPS Vasantkunj, which is where I graduated my 12th standard from. I did science, and I think I still am a semi-nerd. Like I really did love science and physics, to be very precise, and academics were like really my number one priority when I was in 11th and 12th. And I'll talk more about how I used to study and what got me excited about studying and doing well at ACADS and examinations in general in the coming slides. But I think leaving it just here for now. With that, so 11th and 12th, I basically just studied a lot, and then I got into IIT Madras. Like not a lot of people do that. But then I ended up choosing BITS Pilani for my engineering because like I want to do computer science, and IIT Madras was giving me civil, which I did not really want to do. So and then I ended up going to BITS Pilani for my engineering. Spent close to 4 years there. Then I joined a bank which is based in the US called Capital One, which is my first job. Worked for close to 4 or 5 years there in the auto finance or the car loans division. And then with that, like about 2 years ago, left that job and started following my dream of building like a learning oriented neobank for teenagers in India that's called Akudo. And people who, like everyone who haven't heard about Akudo, yes, it's specifically made for people less than 18 years of age. So if you haven't, do check it out and give us a go. So I think that's a brief intro. I'd like to, sort of take a pause here and see if there's anything that you'd like to double click on, Arnav or anyone else from the audience. Happy to take any questions as well. But if not, would love to move on to the next slides and just sort of give you a little sense of how I approach studies and exams when I was in school.
If anyone has questions, they could raise their hand, and preferably if you could like turn on your camera as well, that will help us. Or you could put it in the chat box as well, and I'll read it out. All right, we have a question. Do you think that engineering helped you in any way during your job?
Yeah, look, so it's hard really to say, because if you ask this question from a very skill perspective, then not really. Like all the things that I learned during college, I don't apply in my job on a very day-to-day basis. And it's not like like because I said that that's the reason I could say do my job well at Capital One, or even what I'm doing here at Akudo. But the raw material that sort of goes into engineering, and what I mean by raw material is basically like in general critical thinking, like a numerical or quantitative orientation, or like an analytical first thinking, and all those things, which sort of helps you do engineering well, and engineering also sort of helps you train your mind in a certain sort of a way. I think that raw material has definitely helped me do my job better. When I was at Capital One, it was a very math intensive job. Like we were like working with financial models, we were like writing code to build out those financial models, and it was a very like quantitative heavy job. And now here at Akudo is while it's not as quantitative, it's still a very like structured thing and analytical oriented job. So I think, yeah, like having been trained as an engineer sort of gave me the raw material to be good at this job, but it never really trained me in the skills that was specifically required for these jobs. And in that vein, I think that's how a lot of people approach engineering. It's like you sort of get into engineering and then start figuring out what do you want to do in life. And that's not a very bad option either. Like, all right, so you just start your journey of existential thinking like a couple of years later. But having said that, like it still gives you like a good risk hedged way of approaching life. Like if things don't turn out well, if you started doing something but you weren't good at it, you realize that you don't want to do it anymore, etc., etc., you always have a good fallback thing to fall on, and like get a lot of, be eligible for a lot of other jobs, as well as a lot of other degrees that you might want to pursue and then want to study something else as well, which is not so true for other degrees. Like it's sort of like the number of options that you have are just way more if you're an engineer. And I think that's fine as well. You can just delay that thinking and delay that choice and take your own time to figure out what you want to do. But just circling back to your final question, do I think that engineering helped me in any way during my job? Not really, but also kind of.
All right, I hope Aditya got his answer. Harshit has a question. So when did you start to prep for JEE mains?
Okay, this is hard to answer because I wasn't really prepping for JEE mains or like an examination per se. I really I started basically when I was in my 9th standard, I started going to Fiji. It wasn't to crack JEE, but because like other people were going to tuitions and I didn't get any tuitions, I instead went to Fiji, and I think that was a good enough tuition for me, because like the way they taught things there, it was more intuitive and like more in depth as compared to like just like studying for the final examination. So that's where it started. That's when I also like started falling in love with science and physics and math in general a lot. So with that, in 11th, very naturally I also started preparing for JEE mains, but it wasn't like, hey, I have like 24 months and this is what I'm going to do and this is my plan to ace the exam. It was just that over the next 2 years I'm just going to be studying a lot. So technically, like I started preparing in 11th itself, and I never really did anything differently. Like I just studied everything that was in the syllabus really well all throughout 2 years. Like I didn't have a prep time that was like separately cut out for JEE mains or anything else.
All right. I hope the person got his answer. And we have one question coming in from Prabhat. He wants to unmute, and I'll let him.
Oh, yeah.
So I get him to unmute his microphone.
Go for
Prabhat,
it.
yes.
Hello, no, sir. Hello, Sajal, sir. I want to ask one thing from Sajal, sir. Sir, that you have said that you get a better start of your career by getting a best institute of engineering of India, and then you quite better in your college days, and then you get a better chance to work with a Capital One company. And then, I mean, how could you decide that I'm going to stop all this and working with my own startup? Don't you think that it's going to be risk at all? Because we have listened many stories in that people used to quit their job and then start their own startup. Don't you think it's going to risk you a lot?
It
So
is.
how you decided that this is the time that I need to quit everything and start my own venture? It's easy for you, or you just thought about successful stories and then turned it. Maybe I'm also be the one of them. So how you have decided to do this?
Right. So first of all, like it is risky, but I think it's a risk that I can afford, especially at the stage of life that I'm in. Like I think if I just sort of take a step back, I in no way like I don't think I still know what I want to do, what is my true passion in life. Like I think like all of you, even I'm also looking for the same answers and trying to figure out, what is it that I want to spend the rest of my life, like completely dedicated to. And the way a startup sort of fits into it, like yes, it's risky, but like I think uh, like risk in my head, again coming from a banking and a quantitative background, risk is not a black and white or a 1-0 or a binary sort of an option. Like it's a scale, it's a gradient, and the kind of risk that comes with starting up, with leaving a job right now when you're in your 20s, and like taking a shot at building something from scratch, and like having a vision that it could become something really really huge someday. I think that's a risk reward that you can definitely go for. You're still very young. You have plenty of options to fall back on, just in case like the risk pans out in a different way and the outcome isn't what you were hoping for. But still, like it's not like if you quit your job once, you will never get a job again in your life or anything else. Like a startup, especially now, like a lot of the entrepreneurs like who used to start up back in 2000s, or like maybe even early 2010s. I think they all had to face a lot more risk because society wasn't as open towards startups as it is now. But now, like the world has completely changed. Like anyone would give you a much better job happily if you've like done really well in a startup, because everyone knows how hard it is, and it's no longer an unconventional or a weird path to take. So in a way, like a lot of people have made it easier for me to choose this path, but still, even today, that's a risky proposition. Your parents like are still not conditioned to think that this is the best thing that someone should be doing with their time. But it's a risk that you can very well take if you're in your 20s, and nothing really bad is going to happen to you. You can go back to a job, you can go back study, you can do anything you want with your life. You're still in your 20s.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. I was one more question more. That when I mean something, sometimes you try a thing that which is different from everyone, and then you get started. You can say you started get failed on then. So you think that it's maybe you can say that this is my mistake. I have not listened to everyone, or just move on and do something stuff. Do you think it's easy for a person to change, to prove the fact that he was wrong at a particular point of time, and then he have to do something different? Think it's
Okay, like I think I understood the question, but could you do you mind just repeating that once more, just to make sure I have the right question in mind before I start answering?
sometimes we choose things that are not that we think that we are good at, but we ended up getting failed in it, and then we maybe just get a that we have failed, and then we try to start something new. So sometimes that guilt maybe hurts a lot even when you get successful in other things. So don't you think that these things might not be a part of your journey? You just need to
Hmm.
move on. To think it's better, or you can say you think it's easy, or just you need to say that it's a part of life.
Right. I think it's a part of life. Before I again start answering question, do you have a specific context in mind, Prabhat? Anything that you are specifically going through? I think I could take
Uh,
that into account before
yes,
getting into the
I,
answer.
I can correlate it. I mean, I'm a non-technical background student. I'm learning UX designing.
Okay.
I'm quite better, getting better on it. But my exams, my schedule was not even good for it. Even
Mm-hmm.
though my college is based on all engineering, I mean, its name is North Indian Engineering College. So I have not get too much support from my seniors, because they were like, you are from non-technical background. So how we can trust on you that you can do better in this technical? So these things, maybe you can say, it disturbs me a lot. Even when I do design, sometimes thought me that I'm not going to do better. So maybe you can say I'm doing better at this, but sometimes I feel that I choose a thing that is quite not made for, maybe not for me, but I try to do better because I like it.
Yep, got it. Thanks for sharing, Prabhat. I think it was very brave and bold of you to share that with everyone. And let's discuss, what how I would approach this if I were in your position. So I think it's a very simple framework. Yeah. I think there are two parts to it, not just how good you're at it, but also like how much you love doing that and sort of why you love doing that. That's just one big bucket, like your reason, your motivation of doing something, or like why you love doing it, or why you like spending time doing it, or why you like spending time getting better at it. Like that's one bucket. And then how good you're at it actually compared to other people who did the same thing, that's another bucket. Right. So now this framework is, of course, like it becomes more and more complicated as you like take larger decisions further down in life, in terms of how well that thing pays, etc., etc. But we'll keep all of those variables aside from this equation for now, and only keep these two things: how much you like it, or what's your motivation behind it, and how good you're at it. Right. Now, when you get into the ground and start like measuring for the first time that how well do you like compare as compared to other people doing the same thing, like you said, when it comes to UX design specifically for you,
Yes.
it purely comes down to the second, which is where you lean into the second bucket, is like, why did you choose UX design in the first place? What was your primary motivation? And I think that is where you will find the answer, right? So for example, let me give you a small story about when I faced this back in college. So like I said, I was always like big on academics and like doing good at studies. But when I went to college, I realized that computer science is something that I'm not really particularly enjoying as much as I enjoyed studying physics or math back in school. And here again, I had a choice. I realized, okay, I'm doing, say, like this much. I'm good this much, right? There are people who are doing this well, and there are also people who are doing like way below this as well. Now, I was faced with the same choice. Now, do I put in more effort? Do I try to study more, try to be more focused, try to be more disciplined, try to research more, and then figure out, ask questions, ask people like, how did you do this, etc., etc. And that's where I realized, what, I don't have a motivation for being particularly good at computer science. And if I'm not good at computer science, that's completely fine, because I'm not motivated to be better at it, right? So if you're in such a journey where you're trying new things out, you're trying photography, you're trying UX design, you're trying what coding feels like, you're trying all these things, and if you realize you're not as good at it and you don't feel like getting more good, like that's completely fine. You don't have to feel guilty about it. You can move on to the next thing and just make sure that whatever you're trying, you're just giving that your 100%. If however this is something that truly resonates with you on a much deeper level, then of course, like no matter how bad you are at today, all you have to focus on is getting better tomorrow than you were like one day before, and that's it. It doesn't matter if it takes you like just a week to be like bloody awesome at it, or it takes you like 5 years or 10 years, but all you have to make sure is that you're getting better one day at a time. And soon all of these things, all of these thoughts will go away. I hope I answered the question. Not sure, like feel free to follow up.
Thank you so much for being these kind words. I try to do better in my college. Thank you so
Yep.
much, sir. Thank you so
Yep.
much.
Best of luck, Prabhat. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Sajal, we can move ahead and the following slides. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. All right. So that was the intro. And now zoning in on what an examination or an academic specific thing look like. So look, yeah, everyone, like if you go Google, you will find hundreds of hundreds of videos, hundreds of blogs telling you millions of tips and hacks. So I thought I'll do this. I'll just tell you what worked for me personally, because I was also in your shoes. I was also Googling and asking my seniors and asking my friends, how do you study so much, and what is it that works for you? And like, can you share secrets with me? So like, I thought I'll just distill my story down to you and tell you what worked for me. You can get ideas off of that and create hacks of your own. You can try and use these as is, or you can just completely ditch all this and be like, no, this is going to work for me, and just try find something of your own. All right. So For me, I think first of all, studies like subjects were very concept based and non-concept based when I was in school, right? So when it came to subjects like physics at large, I will not include semiconductors in those chapters in physics because those were very non-concept stupid chapters. I hated them. They had no logic. But like physics at large, I like when you talk about laws of motion or gravitation or rotational mechanics and all of those things, they were very concept based, and even math. And then you had non-concept based studies, which was like till 10th you have a bunch of those subjects. You have like social studies and like all of that, and then you have like inorganic chemistry and what's the color of this salt when you add this and that and all of those things. Absolutely no logic, you just have to know it. So I had very like two very simple fundas. If I was studying something that was concept based, I would like speak everything out loud, like I was teaching someone or I was solving someone's doubt. Like it was an imaginary person learning from me, and like I would come up with questions that this imaginary person is asking me, and that in a way like ended up being a test of how well I understood that concept myself. Because I think this is again a very true verbiage that if you know something really well, or the best way to learn something really well is to teach it to someone. And that's what I followed with myself when it came to concept based studies. And when it came to like non-concept things, I just wrote everything down. I took up a pen and I wrote it. Like I wrote the entire book 2-3 times. And if you write something down, like something at that level of volume and intensity, your brain will pick things up, even if you're like not putting a lot of effort into getting those things. Of course, like there are more hacks on top of it, like you come up with acronyms and do a lot of those things. But like if you just write everything down, like your brain will remember some part of it at least for a few months, and that's enough to get that exam go by. So like very simple strategy. Then like I had this study zone or study mode that I wanted to get into, and I used cues to like train my brain into saying that I'm going in this zone now, right? So things that worked for me were like I'd get a huge bottle of water and like a glass. I'd never drink water out of glass otherwise, but like this was very specific to just studies, and that's why I thought my brain would link this to just studies, because it's not like I drink water out of glass in general all the time. But I would just get that down on the table, like pour that one glass of water, like start having it, and like my brain would immediately start thinking, okay, now it's study time. Like I have to sort of get into that zone. I also had a special shirt and like my favorite ink pen, which I even have till today. I have it from 2009, since my ninth standard. And I also had a cap in between. So it could be anything for you, like anything that cues your brain into like it's now study zone time, and you just get into it. I even switched off my phone during like study hours, and then I planned with my girlfriend that, you know what, this is when we'll take a study break together and we'll discuss. You ask me if I've done this or not, and like we'll challenge each other and shit, and like all of those things. So like all these little hacks and cues to just get into that study mode worked really well for me. You can try out your own new things. Just one call out, like my parents were always after me that, once you just get into this routine, once you wake up early in the morning at 6 o'clock, that's when all of your problems will be good. You'll start studying, you'll start scoring and all. It never worked for me. For the longest time I thought I wasn't disciplined, but I just was not a morning person. And I'd love to tell this to everyone, that it's okay if you're not a morning person. Not everyone is. Like, take your time. If your brain works better at night, you're a night person, own up to it. It doesn't matter what your parents are saying. And then finally, like, I'm a huge fan of strategy games. So like I loved planning, and I found that really exciting, and it made me study like even boring subjects really well, right? So for example, I'd write down the syllabus. I'd again like literally write it down, and when that syllabus didn't make sense to me, like for example, some social study chapters, like social studies, okay, like history ka some random chapter, and then like that chapter like made no intuitive sense to me. What I just do is I just break it down into a number of pages. Like, this chapter is 46 pages, which means like I have to do sessions of 4 as these many pages, and I'll write that down as a syllabus. I'd like literally draw a calendar with like pen and a scale, and like mark that this is what I'll do. I'd made targets, and I miss them. I'd always miss them, but it was really fun, like replanning it, coming up with a V2 version, then a V3 version. Okay, now I have to do like 5 chapters in 10 days, and I have to do 5 chapters in 5 days, and I have to do 4 chapters in 2 days. And it was just like that planning activity was really fun for me. And just writing everything down and like just coming up with it made even like getting to boring things sort of exciting, because you'd be like, hey, I just ticked something off and I achieved something, even though it's just finishing 2 pages that you're going to forget 2 months later, but it got the job done, and like it got you good marks. So 4 things. These are like 4 things that work for me. And things that I'd wish I'd done differently was, first, reverse calculate things whenever you can to get the answer. Don't get like this like elitist about it and be like, I'll solve it conceptually, and I know I can do this. I know I've solved this question before. I know this concept really well. Just whenever you can, just like MCQs are a blessing. You should play that strategy differently and not be like elitist about everything. That was one huge mistake I did. And then stick to the plan, or like the order of section that you would have planned for your examination. Don't overspend time on weak sections, which is what I ended up doing in my JE. And I like got a I took that impact in my rank. But yeah, never do that. So these are 2 things. Very short and sweet slide. That's it. That's all from my side. Happy to dive into question and answers now.
Right, I have a question. The first question is, there are two approaches. There are two types of examinations, right? One is objective, where we have MCQs, reasoning and assertion, and so on. And then we have subjective examinations, like we have for social science, or we have for other subjects, a humanities subject as well. How do you approach these two differently? Like, is there a different approach altogether? I would love to know.
Right. Yeah. So I think there is, and there should be. For me personally, like I never really approached them very differently. Like I said, like for me, the bifurcation was, is it concept-based studying or not? It was never at an examination level. So even if it's an MCQ exam or a subjective exam, like I'd study the concepts at the same level nonetheless. Like, so for example, when I was preparing for my JE, you all know like JE was subjective up until like some out of some 2000 or something, and then it became MCQ after that. I'd even solve subjective questions, even though I knew like it wasn't going to come for me. So it was a very personal choice that I made. And that's why I regret like being very elitist about it and not like modifying the strategy to a very objective paper or something like that. But I think when it comes to studying, like what works personally for me is to like just to know the concept really well, if it's a concept based study, or if it's not a concept or an intuitive or a logical thing based, just know those facts and know those things. And I had different strategies for that, but never at an examination level.
Right, I've got my answer. The second question from my side would be, what to prioritize first? Is it CBSE board exams or is it JE mains? Because both of these are like together now with more sessions, right? Now JE has come up with like around 4 sessions, if I'm not wrong, plus the board exams coming up this month. What to prioritize? Is board examination marks, like the 12th marks especially, does it matter later on? Or is it like if you get it in a good college, then it doesn't matter at all?
So I think between the two, I would personally say that, you know, the competitive exams matter like slightly more. It's not like your boards won't ever matter. Like they'll just stop existing as soon as you give your boards. So just for example, like if you even go to a good college and then you plan to say go for an MBA and you want to like give the cat and go try to get into an IM, right? They will ask for your 11th and 12th exams, and so but it's more of a filter, like a filter. Like for example, all they want to know is that you're not like terribly like you perform terribly in boards, as opposed to being like, hey, you did really good at boards, so let me give you that. No one's going to do that. No one's going to be like, hey, you aced boards, so here's what I'm going to give it to you, right? Everyone's just going to be like, okay, your boards don't have to be terribly bad. So I would personally like prioritize studying for competitive exams more, because I think anyway, like if you've prepared really well for a competitive examination, the odds are you will do decently well in boards. But if you've prepared really well for boards, I'm not sure how well that would translate into a competitive rank. So just with this simple framework, I would approach like prioritizing competitive exams more than boards. And that's exactly what I did when I was in 12th. And that like with that, like I did get a decent enough board percentage as well, apart from cracking other competitive exams.
Right, right. I have a question from Shrishti coming in. How do you deal with anxiety with running a startup or while preparing for examinations and attempting examinations?
Okay. How do I deal with anxiety? Yeah, I don't know. I used to like, first of all, I think it was a good journey to take in terms of dealing with that anxiety. I'm not saying that I never got anxious in the first place, but um I think the first thing I did was just be conscious about it, that, like, I am getting anxious, and what really, like, do I even need to be anxious, or like, what is it, this weird thing that I'm feeling that I know we're calling anxious, but what is this weird feeling that I'm getting, and is it even required? And I think half the times it just got away after that. And like, the more you did that, like, it just sort of became background and normal, like, as opposed to being something very different or weird that you have to deal with specifically. But having said that, there were times when, anxiety levels went through, like went through the roof, like a lot of syllabus was left. I like had taken on a lot of personal pressure to do well, but I was expecting myself to not do well because I hadn't prepared enough. And like, in times like those, I think like talking to a friend, talking to a senior who's been through the same journey, almost always helped. And like, every time like anxiety got through the roof, I just sleep, and then next day I'd wake up, I was completely fine, and I'll be like, okay, now let's get down to business and start studying a lot. But I think for me, anxiety personally was a very point in time thing. It wasn't extended. It's not like I'll start getting anxious today and then I'll be anxious for 1 month straight. Like, I'll be anxious tonight and I'll be anxious a lot. But if I just talk to a friend, if I just talk to myself and feel like if that does the job, that's fine. If not, it's no big deal. It's just one night. Like, just sleep it off. Next day, mostly you're going to be fine. If not, I think there are multiple like other startups as well that are doing really good, that are trying to build something in this space where you get to talk to other teams or other mentors who can help you walk through that journey. I think those are also some other options that can be explored really well. I think that you should just have one person you're really close to and you trust to take their advice unfiltered.
Hope Shrishti got that answer. Yes, we says sleep on it. It always helps. All right, we have one question coming. I'll come to Ria's question in a bit, but I'll come to Vandita's question right now. For students who would be appearing for boards after 2 years of lockdown and online classes, all their classes have been online for 11th and 12th, most of the students. Any special tips for those appearing students?
Are the boards in the competitive exams online or offline for you all? I'm sorry, I haven't
Everything is offline.
Even the competitive exams are offline?
Yes.
Okay, because in our time, like in my batch, they had started doing like an online JEE mains, and like BITSAT was always online and all of these things. So that's why I was asking. But okay, both could be completely offline. I think that it's not going to be very different. It was just a 2 year different. Don't feel too weird about it. I know it's going to be a little jiffy, and it's not going to be smooth. Like, that's it. Like, don't worry or think too much about it. No special tips, because I never had to go through it. I'm really sorry for you all. But I know, like, being, studying stuck in home, like, and like being away from friends and studying in that way would have been a little weird for 2 years. I never had to overcome that challenge myself, so I'm not sure if I'm the best person to sort of come up with a strategy to help you with that. But I think, as far as I can tell, that just think that it's not going to be too weird or too different. You were completely used to this 2 years ago, and it's not going to be very different just going now. It's just going to feel a little jiffy, but you'll get through it. I'm sure you'll power through it. I believe in you all.
I have a point here, following up with Sajal's point. So I graduated last year, and I didn't have board examination, luckily. But I had a point here that practice more, right? The more number of question papers you would solve, whether it being a humanities subject or a heavy science subject, the more practice they would do, it would be better for them to appear, and then it would be normal for them to write an examination. Right now, what is happening is that online examinations may we had resources, right? And now it's like completely offline, and they're not used to that examination mode of sitting in an exam room with all the other fellow students and attempting a paper. So it'd be better if you could like practice more, attempt prelims. Your school must be conducting prelims right now, if not before, and try practicing as many questions as possible, and you should be sailing through it.
Right.
All right. If we have any other questions,
I have an idea for this as well. It just struck me. So sorry to just cut in between. You could just go study in a library. I'm sure there'd be a library in your city. It could be a university that has a library. It could be any other library. People are always there studying. Like it's a thing. That's what a lot of people use libraries for. Just go there and start studying. Like even if not to just give exams, but just go there and sit down for 3 hours straight. I think that's one thing that you all would need it. Yeah, reading rooms work as well, but anything that gets you out of the home and gives you that feel. Reading rooms, I think, I'm not sure how many people go to reading rooms to study for, but library is a very common phenomenon. Is to happen in our college. It happens in a lot of other colleges as well. Any city will have that library that people are studying in. Go there, sit for 3 hours straight. Try, if that feels jiffy, keep doing that for as many times as you want till you get comfortable before the exam.
All right. I hope Vanta's query has been solved. If there's anyone with questions would come up on the stage with us, and you could raise your hand, we'll pick you up and you could ask your question live. If not, I'll go to Ria's question in a bit. All right. We have a question coming in from Jivita. How to manage relationships while studying, especially with parents, right? We might not interact that much with them, and they would feel that why isn't a student interacting, or why is my child not interacting? So how do you manage relationships, also balancing your studying routine?
Right, got it. Great question. Thanks for that, Jivita. So I think the key to, like, in my very limited experience and humble opinion, I think the key to manage any like specific relationship is just being open, transparent, and like getting everyone aligned and on board. Like if you're the only, I think the only way relationships become like taxing and weird is when you're thinking something else, you're approaching things very differently, and you haven't communicated that with it could be your parents, it could be your sibling, it could be your friend, your girlfriend, boyfriend, anyone, right? If you're not communicating what you're thinking and where you're coming from, I think that's where the gap really starts happening. So for example, the way I did it with my parents in school was, like I said, like how I planned study sessions and like study breaks with my girlfriend. I also did that with my parents. I was like, every morning I will wake up at even, I'll start studying at around 9:30 or 12, and I'll do a session till 12 p.m. So I would do a 2.5 hour study session. And then like it was routine. Like I would have iced tea and like chips with my mom from 12 to 12:30, and we'd watch something, or we'd discuss something, or we just like do something together for like that half an hour. 12 to 12:30 was iced tea time for me for the longest number of years in my life. And that's it, right? Like your parents always know where you're coming from, and I think they'd be more than happy to support you in your journey if you're looking to sort of focus a lot on studies, and that requires you to spend a lot of time alone. I think they'd be more than happy to support you in any way they can. In fact, most parents, I think, have the opposite problem, where they want their kid to study more, but the kid just isn't. If it's the other way around, I think it's just about like communicating clearly with your parents and or any other relationship that we're discussing about, for that matter. And after a certain point, like if you're specifically talking about, say, like romantic relationships, if you think that requires managing between studies and relations, then just ditch that shit, dude. Like you could do all of that like in college. You have your whole life to do it. Like if it's actually becoming that toxic, you have to manage between the two, then just study. You can get a girlfriend or boyfriend later.
Right. We have a next question from Harshit. How was your BITSAT experience? Was it on the level of JEE mains, or was it below, or was it near to the board's level, somewhere in between them?
Right. BITSAT, I think, was similar to JEE mains. JEE mains, I think, was not that tough, and neither was BITSAT. So I think they were pretty much the same level. JEE advanced, although traditionally, like before our years, like the kind of practice we did, it was supposed to be a lot harder. But in our year specifically, the JEE advanced also wasn't that tough as compared to the JEE mains. Like the delta between mains and advanced, if say 5 years before I had appeared was say 10, for my year it was just 3 or 4. But when it comes to BITSAT and JEE mains, I think they were pretty much similar. I think the only difference was that BITSAT also asks you English and a couple of other things, and they had that very different bonus question round at the end, where I'm not sure if you all still have that, but in my time, like once you finished all the questions, you could attempt like I think 12 or 18 or like some number of bonus questions. And like that was again very different, very fun. It was just very on the spot, different kind of a thinking. But the level of questions, they were not very difficult. They were JEE mains level.
All right. Perfect. Harshit, I hope your question has been answered. Yes, it's been answered. All right. Ria has a question. What should we do if you're like lost in between and don't know what should we be really focusing more on? And what subfield in computer science? I am believing she's in college right now. Um, should I be getting into for shaping my career?
Okay, I think this is a very, very deep question for us to be answering in this session in like 2, 3, or 5 minutes. I'd of course need a lot more information to really help you with that question. Well, Riaz, but I think let's try the best we can in the time that we have. Just to go through the question again, what should we do if we're lost in between and don't know what we should be really focusing on? And by that, you specifically mean what subfield in CS you should be getting into. Okay, I think, yeah, first of all, it's okay to feel lost. Even though a lot of people around you are not saying it, 80% of them are lost. Even if they know it or they don't. So there's nothing to worry about. I think that's a good place to start. Like you don't have to feel guilty or weird about like feeling lost. I don't think anybody has all the answers. And if someone does, if someone has all the answers at 20, great for them. But for the vast majority, they don't. So it's completely fine. It's completely normal for you to be questioning these things right now and coming to a logical conclusion and answer for yourself that suits you as a personality, right? Second, what subfield in computer science should I be getting into? Look, there is no way to answer this theoretically, and there is no approach or no framework that I can just give it to you, or someone can just teach you, or a formula that you run through it and you get the answer at the end. This thing does not exist, right? And I think this is like, if I could just take a little detour and just give my 2 cents here, is that like the way we're all trained in school, right? You're trained to be thinking that there's a formula, there's calculus, there's a way to calculate things, and there's a right answer, there's a wrong answer, right? I think when it comes to like real life problems and questions like the one that you're dealing with right now, there is like the calculus or the mathemat like the calculus model or the Newton way of thinking does not work, right? The world is more probabilistic here. There are probabilities associated with different events, and that's the view of the world that is more accurate than like there being a formula that gives you one right answer. That thing just doesn't exist. So like now, just answering your specific question, I think just try everything. Like I, for the longest time, didn't know if I really wanted to do CS or not. I literally did everything. I did web development in my first intern. I did app development in my second intern. I did machine learning and data science and data mining related subjects and like internships after that. I tried tech consulting with Deloitte. I literally did everything to just figure out if this resonates with me or not. And if it doesn't resonate with you, you keep on finding the next thing, and that's fine. Like there's no formula that will give you that answer, and it's okay to be lost. Just keep experimenting, it'll come to you.
All right. I hope that solved your query, Ria, and I wish you all the best. Is there any other question? We'll take one or two more questions and then we can wrap up today's session. You can put them in the chat box or raise your hand. We'll bring you up as well.
Awesome. I think everyone's asked all their questions and now they're focusing on, okay, we have a question coming in from Yash. No man, no tips for cheating. I have tips for now how not to cheat. Don't write the answer on your hand and go. Like that's how one of my roommates actually got a SEM back. Like he wrote the answer on his thigh and he went to the examination. All right, great stuff.
All right, amazing. That was today's session. I hope all of these. Okay, we have one question coming in. Last question. Do you have any co-founders in your company? If yes, how did you find them?
Yes, we are 3 co-founders. In addition to me, we have 2 more people. One is Lavika and the other is Jagbir. Both of them are friends from college together. They went to college, they went to IIT Roorkee together back in 2015. I met Lavika at my previous job when I was working at Capital One, and then Lavika roped in Jaggi, and then I roped in a couple of friends from my college, and that's how we all started together and became co-founders. So our startup is like half Pilani and half Roorkee.
Amazing mix. All right, that was today's session for everybody. I hope your queries were solved, and we had a fun session with Sajal coming in from Akudo and answering questions for us. Before we leave, we have an announcement to make. We have a surprise tomorrow. We have the Study Streak launch happening tomorrow, and it's open to everybody. So if you want to be more productive, study in an environment that would push you, and that's happening on Discord. So I'm sure you'll be there for the launch, and we'll have fun. And we launch the club tomorrow, which means that we'll have a new set of audience with who are motivated to study. Right? There are like studying groups which we are introducing tomorrow, and with new features coming in, we have a Pomodoro bot to help them track their studying habits and so on. So more to that tomorrow at 8 p.m. IST, and we'll see the launch happening tomorrow. Thank you so much, Sajal. We'll wrap up today's session.
Right.
And the recording is available on YouTube for those wondering. If you want to revisit the recording once, take down notes if possible, they are free to do so on our YouTube channel, that is BlueLearn. All right. Thank you so much, Sajal. We'll wrap up today's session.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Nice talking to you.
Bye-bye.